You've heard the name Geronimo, right? It just echoes through the history of the American West, a symbol of this fierce, last-ditch resistance. But, behind every legend, there's a real person. So today, let's peel back the layers of the myth and find the man at the heart of this incredible story.
I mean, just think about that description for a second. The tiger of the human species. That's not something you say about an ordinary enemy. That comes from his adversaries, the people who fought against him. It tells you everything you need to know about the fear and, honestly, the respect he commanded. He was seen as a force of nature.
So, how does someone even get a reputation like that? To really get Geronimo, we have to rewind. We've got to go back before the battles, before his name was famous or infamous, across 2 different countries. We have to ask, who was the man before he became the myth?
Well, believe it or not, his story doesn't start with a war cry. It starts with a yawn. Yep, his birth name was Guerrilla, and he wasn't born a chief, destined to lead armies or anything like that. His power, the thing that made him who he was, it came from a totally different place.
So, Guerrilla, which translates to the one who yawns. It's such a quiet, almost gentle name, which is just wild when you think about the reputation he'd get later. He was a medicine man, a spiritual guide for his people. His authority didn't come from a bloodline. It came from this deeply felt spiritual connection.
And his training? It was absolutely brutal. We're talking about rites of passage that would forge a person into steel. Imagine running for 2 full days with no food or sleep, learning how to literally disappear into the desert landscape. They even had a ritual of swallowing the heart of your first kill to absorb its spirit. This wasn't just about survival. It was about mastering the physical and spiritual world around you.
Every story like this has a turning point, a moment where everything changes. For Guerrilla, it wasn't a battle he chose. It was a single, horrific day that would light a fire of vengeance inside him, that would burn for the rest of his life.
Okay, so picture this. It's 1851. The men of his band are in a nearby town, Casquille, for what was supposed to be a peaceful day of trading. While they're gone, 400 Mexican soldiers sweep in and attack their undefended camp. When Guerrilla got back, his entire world was gone. His mother, his wife, Alope, and all 3 of his kids slaughtered. In that moment, the man he was died, and someone else began to emerge.
In his reef, he climbed a mountain, Bowie Peak, to mourn, and it was up there that he had this incredible vision. He said he heard a voice that made him a promise. No gun will ever kill you. I will guide your arrows. This was the birth of his power. It was a divine guarantee that made him fearless, and in the eyes of his people, maybe even invincible.
So now, fueled by this unbelievable loss and guided by his newfound power, Guerrilla, who his enemies started calling Geronimo, he became one of the most brilliant guerrilla commanders in history. He didn't just fight one country, he took on 2, Mexico and the United States. He was a genius at turning the harsh desert, his home, into his greatest ally. His small groups could cover 70 miles a day through mountains that would cripple a normal army. They didn't need slow supply wagons because they'd just eat their exhausted horses. He combined this incredible stamina with brilliant ambush tactics and, of course, the psychological weapon of his own legend.
Okay, let's look at a classic Geronimo move from 1882. Step 1, the bait. You steal some horses, because you know they're going to chase you. Step 2, the trap. You lead them right into a canyon where you've already hidden your sharpshooters up on the high ground. Step 3, a swift, deadly attack. And step 4, the message. The enemy commander, a man known for his own massacres, was captured and executed. See? It was both strategy and pure vengeance.
For decades, Geronimo seemed untouchable, a ghost in the mountains. But by the mid-1880s, the pressure from the U.S. Army was becoming just overwhelming. This all led to the final campaign that would finally bring the Apache Wars to an end.
The U.S. Army tried 2 totally different playbooks to catch him. First, there was General Crook. His philosophy was smart. Use Apaches to catch Apaches. He hired native scouts who could actually keep up. But after Geronimo escaped a surrender, Crook was replaced by General Miles, who went for pure brute force. We're talking 5,000 soldiers. That was a quarter of the entire U.S. Army. But it didn't work. In the end, Miles had to go back to Crook's method and use Apache scouts just to find him.
So what finally made him surrender? It wasn't a battle. In September 1886, Geronimo learned that the entire Chiricahua tribe,
We're talking every man, woman, and child, even the scouts who had helped the army, had been rounded up, forced onto cattle cars, and shipped to prisons in Florida. His fight was over because the very world he was fighting to protect was gone. And this is where the story takes one of the strangest turns in American history. You think that's the end, right? But it wasn't. Geronimo entered this bizarre final chapter of his life, becoming a prisoner of war who was also a national celebrity.
Let this number just sink in for a minute. 27 years. For almost 3 decades, the entire Chiricahua people were held as prisoners of war. And this wasn't just Geronimo's band of fighters. This included everyone, even the scouts who had served the U.S. Army loyally. It was a staggering betrayal.
The human toll of this exile was just catastrophic. You take a people who have lived for centuries in the high, dry desert, and you drop them in the humid swamps of Florida. They had no immunity. Disease just tore through their camps. In the first 3 years alone, 119 Chiricahua died from malaria and other sicknesses. It was devastating.
And the tragedy didn't stop there. The children were taken from their families and shipped off to boarding schools like the one in Carlisle, Pennsylvania. The official policy was to kill the Indian in him and save the man. But for so many, this effort to destroy their culture ended up destroying them too. 50 Apache children died at that one school alone, far from everyone and everything they'd ever known.
So, for the last 20-plus years of his life, this was Geronimo's official status. He wasn't a respected elder, not even just a defeated enemy. He was, officially, a prisoner of the United States government.
And yet, here he is, riding in President Teddy Roosevelt's inaugural parade. The contrast is just unbelievable. The government that held him captive also trotted him out as this living symbol of the Wild West it had conquered. He became a spectacle, selling autographs and buttons off his coat at World's Fairs, a caged celebrity.
Geronimo died in 1909, still a prisoner of war. But his legacy? Well, that is far from settled. In fact, you could say the fight he represented continues today, just in some very different ways. His last words really say it all. He told his nephew he was sorry he ever surrendered. He wished he had just stayed in the mountains and fought until he was the very last man alive. That fire inside him, it never really went out. And today, the fight for Geronimo's legacy is very much alive, and it's centered on his final resting place. For decades, there have been stories that his grave in Oklahoma was robbed. Now, brand new federal regulations that just took effect in 2024 and 2025 are giving tribes more power to reclaim their ancestors' remains from museums and institutions. And that has totally reignited the push to finally bring Geronimo home. Which brings us to our final question. Geronimo's deepest regret was that he didn't die in his homeland. His descendants believe his spirit can't rest until he's returned to the mountains where he was born. So, more than 100 years after his death, is it time to grant his final wish?